Karen.
Yes.
I figured it out.
Woohoo!
I know. You know, why are you woohooing it? I don't even know when I figured it out.
Because you finally figured something out.
I did. I figured it out. I figured out the secret to unlocking human consciousness.
What did you know?
Communicating with extraterrestrials and creating a new Earth.
Wow.
Yep. You know how to do that?
No.
There's an app for it.
I bet there is.
No, actually, it's an actual app. And it was built by a woman who went from biochemist to spiritual badass. Trained like a ninja, survived a near-death experience, and now basically reverse engineers enlightenment.
Oh.
Right? I mean, what have you...
There's hope for us.
I was going to say, what have you done today?
I made some toast.
Well, that might actually be better. Today's guest, she's got soul and she's got tech, and together they're called SoulPod. Stay with us. You'll find out what all that means on this episode of the Skeptic Metaphysicians.
My name is Will.
And I'm Karen.
And unlike Mulder and Scully,
We both want to believe.
so we've embarked on a journey of discovery.
We've talked to people deeply entrenched in the spiritual and metaphysical world.
We've thrown ourselves into weird and wonderful experiences. I even joined a coven of witches.
And wait, you joined a coven?
Yep, all in the interest of finding something
Anything.
that will prove that there's something beyond this physical,
three-dimensional world we all live in.
This is the Skeptic Metaphysicians.
Hey there, I'm Will.
And I'm Karen.
And today we're excited because our guest happens to be what happens when you mix a science lab with a meditation retreat and throw in a cosmic awakening for good measure.
That sounds wonderful and exhausting.
She's probably very tired. Yeah, because see, she's a Reiki master. She's a martial artist and the founder of a soulfulness app that's got more spiritual downloads than the Akashic records during Mercury retrograde. Please welcome to the show the woman who's bringing biotech and higher tech together, Crystal Cassidy. Thanks so much for coming on the show.
Thank you so much for having me. That's one of my favorite intros of all time. So thank you.
That's fantastic. Well, you know what? It's a small fee if you want us to record that, and so you can carry it around with you wherever you go.
100%.
It can be your
I need
ringtone.
that every morning.
Well, we'll just call you every day, and then we'll just record it. We'll just play it back for you. It'll be
Deal.
perfect. Oh. All right. I think we need to start at the core. All right. We're talking big concepts like spiritual awakenings and things like that. And you said that awakening requires courage. So how do you define awakenings?
Ooh, good question. Awakening is this process of turning the light on in your awareness. And the more that you turn that on, the more that you become aware of. And as you become aware of more, both the light and the dark within you and the world that you inhabit, the ask is to see how much of that you can hold in your human. So I think of awakening as how much of your soul can you bring into this dimension of space and time. And that's really my mission, is how much of my soul can I bring into this space and time. But the process of it is varied for each person. Each person comes into this incarnation with a different energetic constitution. So one person's awakening is not necessarily going to look the same as another person's awakening, though there are themes for sure. But that's really how I view it, is turning up the dial of awareness and seeing how much of your soul you can bring into this dimension.
Cool. Well, I got a follow-up question, but I got to say, if you're only listening to the audio, you're missing out the great action going on behind her. There's a cat that's trying to make itself really comfortable right now, and all I can think about is, is it? No, not yet. No, not yet. There it goes. Okay, good.
Got the perfect spot.
Right.
That is his favorite blanket.
It's soon to be mine too. Now I must be so comfortable, but
It is a very good blanket. His name is
all right.
Hubble for the
Hubble.
satellite, for the telescope.
Yeah, that's awesome. That cat must be out of this world. So, okay. So, I love your definition of spiritual awakenings, but then why do you say it takes courage?
Yeah, such a good question and conversation, because as you dial up that light of your awareness, it asks a lot of you. And it takes courage at each step, and there's infinite steps of awakening in my view. And this journey into wholeness. And it can be daunting, especially at the beginning. You know, you're sitting in meditation, or you're trying to sit in meditation, and you're coming up against yourself. And that's why meditation, especially at the beginning, can be so challenging, because it really asks, how much of yourself can you sit with? And that takes courage to become more aware of your thoughts. A lot of times, especially at the beginning, the thoughts that you're having aren't exactly what you would want to be having, and shame and guilt and all these other elements can come into the experience. And it takes courage to sit with discomfort. And a lot of the awakening process is uncomfortable, because you're moving more and more into the unknown. And the ego, the personality, the self, it really likes the known. It likes to predict. It likes to think that it's in control. And the nature of the mystical, the nature of the soul, is very fluid. It is merging with the void, the unknown. And so all kinds of different elements of courage are required in the process.
So you said something earlier that kind of, I guess, triggered a question for me, that you're bringing in your soul, or you're dialing it in to bring it into this world. And I always thought we had to get out there, like project ourselves out. Is there a difference, or have I just been doing it wrong the whole time?
Such a good question. And no, you haven't been doing it wrong. Yeah, it's actually both and. So there is this, what a lot of people are thinking of, and I think you're thinking of, is you're moving outside of the self. So part of the journey is to leave your ego behind a little bit. So I like to think of, at the beginning of the awakening experience, the ego or the self is in the driver's seat. And as you awaken, the ego takes the back seat and the soul takes the driver's seat. So there is this dance that you're talking about, which is, yes, you're expanding into the field of awareness, this wholeness, this oneness, this experience of connectivity that challenges beliefs and converts it to knowing. And then you're coming back, right? You're coming back into the human experience. You're having conversations like we're having today. You're doing your work in the world. And I like to think of, we don't talk as much about that part of it, which is really bringing the meditative, spiritual soul element, frequency, energy, whatever you want to call it, into this dimension of time. And I consider that like the complete loop.
And it makes perfect sense, right? We talk about all the time how growth happens at the edges of your comfort zone, and it explains a lot why people aren't as spiritual awake as everyone would hope, because it's a lot easier to just go, I'm just going to let things go the way they are. Doing research on you, I noticed something that made me sit up and go,
Was it gas?
Yes, it was. After I had the Gas X tablets, and suddenly I realized that you talk about the importance of meditating longer than 10 minutes.
Ooh, yes. That can be something that causes some crunchiness in some people.
Do you understand my need for Gas X?
I do. And really, this is again, any practice that helps connect you to your highest self, in my view, is a valid practice. So a 5-minute meditation to call your energy back, to get some grounding, that has a place, and it's important. And if you're looking to really accelerate your spiritual development, the 5 minutes of time typically doesn't give you enough time to expand into those brainwave states that allow for the transcendent experience. We're in our human, right? So we're working with time, especially at the beginning of your experience. And so in my experience, after meditating for over a decade every day now, the 15 to 20 minute mark tends to be where I find there's a gear shift. And the more familiar you get with that gear shift in your meditative experience, the more control you can start to get over it. So, I mean, at this point for me, I can find that gear shift earlier. And some days it's still a struggle, and I'm finding that gear shift after 30, 40 minutes. So the longer you go, and if you start to go to like an hour, or 2 hours, 3 hours, you start to realize there's these waves of experience that come through, and you can learn how to ride those waves that you're just not going to catch in a 5-minute, even 10-minute meditation.
Yeah, once I get to 2 and 3 hours of meditating a day is when I realize that I need a new job. I think my boss would be pretty cranky.
Yeah.
Got to get up real early.
And it kind of makes sense because when I meditate, it's like the quick ones. So we've done different programs, and we're like, okay, I'm going to do this every day, and it almost feels like, okay, I have to do this and get this done. It's just 10 minutes. But when we've just kind of had our own meditations where you sit and you meditate, and then you feel that gear shift or whatever, you get into the zone, then you just don't want to get out.
Oh,
and you can stay there, and it's a longer time. But I think for me, I mean, I'm nowhere near your expertise or experience in meditating. It's hard to do it quickly. I can't,
Well, yeah, I think, was it the Monroe Institute? Someone says that when you sit down to meditate, you need to give yourself the ability to not be rushed, right?
Yeah.
To allow yourself to have it take as long as it's going to take, and don't be rushed. Don't have a time frame.
When you think I'm going to do a 10-minute meditation, it almost feels more like a chore. Like, I've got to get this done and cross it off my list. So I think you don't really allow yourself to fully experience it.
That's a good point. Yeah.
Totally. Yeah, that check mark thing that us humans love to do is just check it off our list. And I think for me, that transition from it being like a biohack, like, yes, meditation helps with sleep. It helps with all kinds of amazing things to optimize our lives. But once you, I think, shift into the reason that you're meditating is not just to sleep better and have a calmer mind. It is to transform your life and your consciousness, and to awaken and self-realize in this lifetime. That why is a lot more compelling than, the checkbox for I did my 5-minute grounding meditation, which again I love, but it's not like the core of my practice.
And that's why I brought the conversation to meditation, because the biggest question mark is always, we open the show with, what is a spiritual awakening, and why does it take courage? Then went to meditation, because I was going to ask, well, how does someone awaken spiritually? And most of the times the answer is meditation. That's why I asked that question. But in your estimation, long time meditation, that's the way to awaken?
Yeah, I think, again, awakening can come to you in any form. I think that there's all kinds of ways the universe can work with you to help you awaken. If you're meditating, though, this is, you're setting that intention that this is something that you're interested in. And so the universe will meet you more than halfway. So in my opinion, meditation is one of the most efficient methods of awakening. And it's something that, yes, we have SoulPod and we have guidance, but ultimately, once you know the mechanics of this practice, then you can bring that with you anywhere. It's always accessible, and it starts to bleed into your life in amazing ways. So I do think it's one of the core practices for a reason. And other elements like psychedelics and breath work and yoga can be these portals into higher states of consciousness. And it shows you what is possible, which is very exciting. But meditation helps you sustain that and embody it and integrate it. If you're doing it every day, you can reach those psychedelic states just through meditation. But it's really the foundation, I think, of a consciously awakening person.
Well, there's so many other things, other topics I want to talk to you about, like Kundalini and extraterrestrials and all kinds of stuff. But since you mentioned SoulPod, let's dive into that a little bit, because that's an important conversation to have. Can you explain to us what SoulPod is actually?
Yeah, SoulPod at its core is a platform for awakening. So it's designed to step you day by day into a personalized journey. So I love understanding where somebody's at in their spiritual development. What's your relationship to things like ambition and expression and intuition? Not just if you're having a hard time sleeping and you're stressed out, because we all are. And through that understanding, we help to pair you with practices that are probably going to be the most potent for where you're at right now. And the other thing about SoulPod that I love is the community aspect, which we're working on a lot this year too. Really exciting things coming. But, when I was awakening, I didn't have very many spaces to go to. I wasn't religious. I was literally calling up ashrams and asking to speak to nuns and monks on the phone because I had questions about what.
And they say, sorry, but they're going, this is a silent ashram. Sorry, can't come to the phone.
Yeah, but they were amazing, and they really did help me understand things because I didn't have anywhere else to talk about these experiences, the weird, the mystical, the difficult. And so that's really important in SoulPod as well.
So it's an app, right?
It is on iOS. Download. Yeah, we're working on Android. We're working on it.
Okay, so it's an app. It's exciting, but then you say it's a personalized experience. So do you ask questions of the person when they download the app that gets the parameters set for them? And then it crafts an individual journey for each person?
Yeah, we ask a series of questions. We call it astral intelligence. And we have a series of journeys. And through those series of journeys, we pair people onto a path. And so you'll have a path to go through. And each journey is 21 rituals over 30 days. So it's really an immersive experience. And each day is going to build on the one before it. So you really learn how to stretch your relationship with breath work. And I'm talking about like yogic breath work, which helps to introduce you to the contemplative state and then the unfocused expansion. And I find that process is really powerful for many people.
That sounds amazing. But
it really does.
So is this something that you need to devote 2 to 3 hours a day to?
Not quite that much time, but you totally could. But each practice is at least 15 minutes long, some of them closer to 30. And then we have a few we just released a feature called Portals, which is a little bit more bespoke. They're like niche deep dives into some of these spiritual concepts. And we have walking portals coming next, which I'm really personally excited about. Walking meditation has been a big transformer for me.
That sounds so flipping cool.
It really does. So with walking meditation, I mean, it sounds like you're walking while you're meditating. Do you have to be like outside in the woods, or can you do it in the middle of the city?
Or pacing in the house?
It's a really interesting experience. My personal practice, I live in San Francisco and up in the hills a little bit, and I make this my practice to walk around the city. So walking meditations are definitely challenging your comfort zone because you're walking in this kind of trance-like state. So you're trying to maintain that meditative mind as you walk. And we walk you into that. No pun intended.
Sorry. I need to record a cymbal crash on this thing next time. Right.
But we walk you into the meditative state, and then you start moving in that trance state, and then you'll stop, go back into the meditative state, and see if you can go even deeper. And so, of course, this requires you, if you're in a public space, I mean, beaches are great, the park is great, but I find it really interesting to walk around the city, and I've had people stop me. One of my favorite experiences is I thought I was alone, and I had stopped in front of a few homes, and I had just felt the energy moving, and I was kind of moving like Qigong kind of vibes. And I had people coming out of their homes being like, "What are you doing? I want to do that."
I thought you were going to say, "What are you doing? I need to call the ambulance."
Get out of here. The police.
Right.
But they could feel the energy that was being generated. And so walking meditations are a really great way to bring those higher levels of consciousness into your waking state.
Well,
and it takes practice.
Yeah, I was going to say that I would assume that this is not for the beginner.
Right.
You need to really be, I guess I would even say advanced in meditative states before you attempt it, because, especially in the city, there are lampposts and
potholes,
mailboxes, and people everywhere. So you have to be able to navigate both at the same time. I don't know.
So you're
it takes some practice. And I always tell people, you want to feel safe. So you don't want to feel unsafe on a walking meditation, but you're not necessarily going to feel comfortable, because it is a different practice, and people are going to be walking by you. You can wear sunglasses, you can wear a hat that's like walking meditation. I think they have those online. And but
really?
They must. I've seen.
Somebody's got to have one.
If not, hello, opportunity.
Walking meditation in progress. But I have seen beginners really take to the practice once they understand some of the mechanics. But to your point, it can be very helpful to establish at least the understanding of the meditative state on the cushion.
Gotcha.
And I can see how it might be, like you're saying, for beginners, it might be helpful, because for me, like when I cook, and which I do a lot, chopping, I zone out. That's my meditation, but I'm still chopping, and I have a big old knife, and I've not cut myself yet. If I knock on wood. Yeah. So maybe that's, people, when you think about meditation, you think you have to sit still in the quiet and clear your mind, and it's very daunting. Mm. And so maybe if your body's doing something, it enables you to clear your mind better for some people.
Well, and you doodle when you are sitting listening to a lecture or something. You doodle, and it helps you focus. Right. Same with our daughter; she does the same thing. So,
aww, that's cute.
We need to finish off that coloring book, Skeptic Metaphysicians coloring book, because people can be coloring all that listening.
But then that stresses me out.
But that stresses you out. But it really, it helps me get into a meditative state. So,
like I can draw my own thing, but if I have color, then it's like I have to finish. I'm like,
All right. Well, SoulPod sounds amazing,
it really does.
And we're gonna talk about how to access that here in a few minutes. But I know that you have gotten at least 2 new members. Anyway, so we'll talk about that in a second. But let's dive into the other really cool topics. Like there's so much talk these days about Kundalini, and there is talk about it from both sides of the fence, right? That Kundalini is the gateway to spiritual experiences, but then the other side is going, you don't want to mess with this stuff because it's going to mess you up. So where do you stand on it? What is Kundalini, and how can we activate it if you want to?
Oh, love to. So the first kind of thing I think about when it comes to Kundalini is that it's inherent in all of us, so it exists, right? It is a stored energy at the very base of our energetic system. I like to think of it more as a gate than this amorphous energy. It is amorphous energy, but I imagine Kundalini awakening as the gate opening, and more energy. You already have energy moving into your system, but more energy can start to move into your central channel. And so you can imagine more energy moving, just like in a light bulb, you're turning that light up, and you don't want to blow the fuse.
Right. Especially something like this. So for most of the people who are listening understand what the channel is, but for those that may not be, basically you're talking about that channel inside of us that goes through the chakras. And so this energy, it's almost seen like a serpent, right? It just coils around that channel and goes up.
Yeah.
And makes you do all kinds of wonky things.
Yeah, it's connecting and activating all of those energy centers, which when this happens to you, you discover, they are real. They're not just like metaphors for talking about energy. The energy centers are very real. And these are intersections of many lines of energy coming together. And the central channel kind of follows your spine, and this flow of energy is both moving up and down into this circuitry that's up and kind of down. And when this opens up for you, a lot of people can experience as a sudden rush, and all the energy goes up to the very top of your energy centers, up to your crown. That was not my experience. My personal experience was one center at a time over many years. But the initial experience of it opening, of the gate opening in meditation about 20 minutes in, was, this oneness experience that you hear so much about. But once you experience it for yourself, you're like, oh, we really actually are all connected. Like, this isn't just a philosophy. It's inherent to this reality. And that is a huge shift. And for me, that was the first shift, my first and second energy center. And then it moved up. And every time it moves, it's almost like a birthing process, I feel like. I feel like it's a birthing into a new earth, a new you. And there's challenges at each point in that process. And some people will tell me, they have fear about it. And I think that there isn't one way to do it. And I'm not necessarily a big fan of saying, don't do this or don't do that. But what I will say is it is very powerful energy, and sometimes it'll spontaneously open up, and the human in you will think that it's out of control, but there is some level of you that was ready for it. So I often tell people that on some level, maybe not consciously, you were ready for this experience. So there's a little bit of trust and faith that comes into that as well. But I've heard all kinds of different experiences. Mine was very incremental.
All right. Yeah, well, we've heard all kinds of people who it was a spontaneous Kundalini awakening, and they just lost their minds, and suddenly they couldn't do things that they used to be able to do, like go to work and talk to their spouses and things like that. So be careful what you ask for.
Yes, it will. I will say that each time it moved, for me, my external life shifted within. I just remember being like, okay, the next 2 weeks, I need to just take it easy, because I know that things are changing. And the rate of change, because if you think about it, if you're moving into different frequencies of being, the external world has to adjust to your consciousness. It's a law of attraction. And so the discombobulation that can come with that can be very intense. So very much exercise with caution.
Discombobulation the head. Right? There's another hat, right?
Well, that's the T-shirt that you wear with the hat.
Exactly. Yes. All right. So, how can someone? I guess you mentioned meditation after about 20 minutes, but if someone wants to actively make that come alive, are there any exercises or things that people can do to activate it, or is it just a spontaneous thing? It's either you got it or you don't, baby.
Everyone has it, so it's just a matter of time. But I think the most, in whether it's this lifetime or the next one, but I think the most powerful thing to do is, if you're interested in this energy opening, is setting that intention. If you simply set that intention, then you're like, I think I'm ready for this. I think I'm ready to discover what this central channel can really do. It will start to meet you. And I'm not convinced that you have to do any particular practice, though there are, and I do Kundalini yoga and I do Kriya yoga. Those are accelerators for sure. Kind of like psychedelics are accelerators for the mind. Kriya, Kundalini, certain breath work, some of which is in SoulPod, so you can start there, nice and easy. Those practices will start to shake up your energetics so that gate can start to open.
Gotcha. Right. Now, long-term listeners of the show know about our New Reality TV network. You talk about a new Earth, and you just mentioned it a little while ago about opening up to New Earth. What is the New Earth, and are we in it right now?
Good question. I think we are entering it. I think we're in a very interesting point in space and time where there is, even though things seem very crazy out there, I do think there's a lot of people awakening. And I do think that there's not a coincidence that we're having this acceleration of technology and all kinds of things coalescing at the same time. And I do think that a lot of that is serving humanity's next evolution. And just like with the awakening process, which is really a birth canal, and especially during some of the challenging parts of that birth, it's very dark and it's very constricted, and you can't really see very far in front of you. And so there is that element of birthing, I think, into the new earth, and I think that is where we're at. And there's certain people, I think, that maybe have already stepped into it. But as far as what it is, I think it's a graduation as a species into a Gary Zuvkov calls it a multi-sensory experience. So this is a graduation into us using our energetics solely in this dimension of space and time and starting to move into the field experience as humans, realizing that this central channel that we're talking about is technology to be awakened, and that is going to serve humanity in absolutely amazing ways that I'm personally so excited about, and that's why I do what I do. But a new earth is quite literally a new way of humanity growing and connecting and evolving.
And I love that you're talking about the technology and that you're working with the technology, because I think, at least in this country, I think people are so into the newest, the latest, the high tech, and they're kind of fixated with that. So you look at the spirituality and the people that are doing meditation and yoga, and that seems so kind of old school. So maybe it's the universe telling us, hey, if this is what people need, we're going to give you this technology, and that will be something that they can accept readily to help propel you into this new earth.
Yeah, while still giving you an oasis of personal human touch.
Exactly.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, the technology part is very interesting, and just like with any tool, the intention behind it's very important.
Oh yeah.
And I do think with the intention of the heart space, rather than such a hyper focus on the intellectual analytical mind, which I have a very strong one. I come from the sciences. I love it. But we do need to move into the feeling, the heart experience, the connective experience more. And so I think technology is almost kind of paradoxical, but I think that it can help us illuminate elements of ourselves that we might not yet be aware of, kind of like our higher minds. I don't know if we're quite there yet, but at the same time, it's important to not forget your power and to give your power away to technology. Then that is not a upliftment of humanity. So empowering us through technology in a way that helps us awaken, I think is really exciting.
And I think it also brings it to the mainstream a little bit more, because people can understand that, and then maybe if they can use it as a tool to use the technology to not have to rely on the technology,
and to not have to call up ashrams.
Right, or become those people in Wall-E.
So I have to say, well, I'm very proud of you.
Oh,
You have not jumped on the aliens thing.
I was next.
I was waiting.
That was
I
next.
thought that would have been the first thing. He
No,
is
that was next.
all about that. I'm like, wow, when's it going to happen?
That was next. I was trying to find the right segue in, and we just got it right. We're talking about Earth, planet Earth, but there are other planets out there, and apparently there's all kinds of disclosure events you've been hearing about all the time, and you say that meditation might be a great conduit for us to communicate with extraterrestrials. Is that right?
Yes. Ooh, sometimes I feel them, so I just felt a little surge of energy.
Ooh.
Yeah, they are very, very present in this evolution into a new Earth, because, like, I think what you're kind of leading towards is that a new Earth also includes humanity taking their space in a galactic relationship.
Yes.
And we've forgotten that, and we tend to think that we're just kind of off on our own, but we're so not. And so I think that's going to propel our understanding of ourselves as a species. And meditation, I think, is absolutely pivotal to this transition, because they communicate through consciousness. That is their mode of technology, that is their mode of transport, that is their mode of communication. And so they're very respectful of free will. They don't want to scare anybody. Mm-hmm. And so if you have an intention of connection, that's the biggest element of it. But if you've worked with your ability to enter these nonlinear states of consciousness, that's where they hang out, and that's where they can connect. And they're much more interested in that relationship than they are in like showing up in their ships, even though I've experienced that as well. But the energetic relationship is just, I mean, I'm fascinated by it. And it's what I'm very deep into right now, because there's picking up speed as far as contact.
Well, couple of things, and bear with me here, because this is a deep subject for me.
Oh, I love this subject, so.
All right. When I was in college, I read a book that scared the bejesus out of me. It was called Communion. It was written by Whitley Strieber. And apparently this book is a recounting of his challenges with visitations. Because of that book, I slept with the light on for 2 weeks in my dorm room. My college roommate still to this day hates me for it. But it scared me off from trying to attempt contact. And there's a lot of talk these days about different types of extraterrestrials, and some that are really cool and some that are really not. So, A, is it fine to let go of that childhood fear of these grays coming and showing up in my room in the middle of the night? And if so, how can I do that?
Good question. A lot to this. Sorry, what was that, Karen?
I said, and if not,
And if not.
dot.
Yeah. What kind of bazooka am I going to need to keep myself safe?
No bazooka on Earth.
I know, right? Bazooka, too.
Right.
Yeah,
With
I
these
think-
words. No, sorry.
I mean, I do. I'm not a huge conspiracy theorist, but I do think there are a few that are pretty accurate. And I think one of them is the kind of disinformation campaign over the last 100 years around extraterrestrials. And that goes from media, how the government's spoken about them. You'll notice it's always spoken about in a national security threat context. And so I think that there's a lot that's been planted in humanity's subconscious of fear. And you're totally right to ask this question early on, because this is the first practice that when I'm walking people through contact, we have to talk about this. We have to talk about the fear. And in my experience, when you're reaching in meditation these frequencies of, I call it love and above, the extraterrestrials or beings that you contact are going to be in love and above. Some of them, so much so that they cannot bring their frequency down below a certain level. And you can kind of understand why. It's like, would you bring your frequency down deep into fear if that's where you had to meet somebody? And it's like, maybe for a little while, but we can't do it for that long. So there's a similar thing going on. The other element that I think may be the case is that there are various species, for sure. The ones that I connect with tend to be of the light being experience, and I have all kinds of different theories on that. But I think that these species, if they're intergalactic, they have evolved to a certain level such that their tendency for what humans see as conflict and violence and tribalism, they've all evolved past that on some level. Some of them might be a little like experimental, I think more so back early on in the 1900s, as far as people having these experiences of being waking up in their room and, extraterrestrials are there. I will also say extraterrestrials and other spirits are different. So there's kind of different categories here. I'm talking about extraterrestrials, these benevolent, highly evolved beings. We could also talk about darker entities and stuff like that. Those are not necessarily the same thing. I think they're very different. So if you wake up in the night and you see something in your room that's scary, a lot of times that's a spirit or a amalgam of energy that is not necessarily extraterrestrial. So there's a lot to this question. And I also think there may have been a period of time where they were very interested in our genetics. I think that time has passed. I don't know if it's because we're getting more unhealthy, but they're not as interested anymore.
That would explain a lot, actually.
Really?
So I do think there was maybe a period of time where this was important to them for some reason. I think their own genetic evolution. But I think that time has passed, and maybe there was some damage done as far as consent at that point in time. But for me, I've only ever had benevolent, very interesting, sometimes very intense experiences. And one of the ways you can work with this, if you do attempt contact through meditation, is to ask them to help you with your fear. Because even me, I had a very intense experience in the desert once. I encountered some fear. I was like, whoa, this is like a movie level experience. I'm a little freaked out, and they can feel that and hear that. And they're also not going to push you too far. They always kind of retreat if they feel like they're coming up on the edge of your capabilities. They won't push you too far, but they also will push you a little bit, and you got to work with your fear. And so it is an evolution. It is a ongoing dance of getting to know one another.
My fear must be ginormous because I've never seen anything or experienced anything, even though I want to. Like my father, when I was growing up, he grew up in Cuba, and he said he and a bunch of different people actually saw a craft. And to that day, he was always watching all the ancient aliens and all the UFO shows on what used to, I guess, back then was like In Search Of, with Leonard Nimoy and things like that. And so he instilled this interest in me that has never gone away, which is why I read the damn book, which I wish I hadn't read. But but I've never seen anything. I've never heard anything or been contacted by anything, and I really want to, but I'm really afraid of it. So. In like SoulPod, do you have a track that gets you in contact with these people?
It's so funny you ask, because I'm literally working on that this weekend.
Yay! All right.
I'm writing it, and we've been doing groups together in real life, but we're gonna create a portal for this experience, because I do think it's really entangled with and important to humanity's awakening experience. I think the two really are intertwined as far as how we understand and bring more light to our awareness. They're very excited. They're like, now is the time. I've gotten that message in the last few weeks even. They're very present. And so your willingness, you mentioned that you're excited to have contact. In my experience, that's the most important ingredient, is willingness, and then just starting to sit with the idea that they are out there. So that's like the first step. And sometimes I have people just go outside, meditate with that intention of like, I'm not alone, I'm reaching out. And that's going to help you start to navigate your fear and kind of understand, okay, wait, why am I afraid? What is the worst case scenario here? What is...
Probes.
My husband says,
I'm just being honest here, right?
He's like, don't leave and not take me. So there's these beings are very advanced and very, very powerful and incredibly loving. Like the amount of love they have for us it's very intense.
And I'm grateful that you've had that wonderful experience, but is there validity to the fact that there are other races out there that may not have our best interest in mind? And if so, how do you, when you meditate and ask for contact, say, but not you, I just want them?
Just the nice ones.
Right.
So I think of it in two ways. The first is, and I asked one of the gurus that I studied with, I asked him this question, and he told me, he was like, well, do you think that everybody in New York does only good things? Or in any city, in anywhere on earth? And I was like, no. And he's like, so there's variation in what we would consider good and bad. And I pair this with kind of what I was speaking to before, which is that these beings, even the grays, they are highly evolved, and there are some rules of engagement when it comes to interacting with species like us that are not yet part of the galactic family. So I do think there is some expectations around these interactions, and there may be some rogue ones, that might have scared a few people. But as you can imagine, it's almost like it's mostly because we don't understand it that we're scared. And so from their perspective, that was not necessarily their intention. And they're trying to figure it out too. They're trying to figure out how to engage with these populations. And I think the conclusion that they've come to, my own personal opinion, is that it's not so much with governments, it's through each individual to some sort of threshold. It's like a grassroots approach to contact. And I think that's why more and more people are having their own personal experience, so that when more global contact happens, you're like, oh yeah, I've got this. I've met them.
That comes to mind is like the ripping of a Band-Aid, right? Why don't they just show up on their ships and go, we're here, right? They just, rather than just like...
Because we would panic.
Well,
everybody would freak out because they've seen the movies. The
disinformation campaign that they've been
or
planning.
they wouldn't believe it. And they wouldn't understand what these beings are actually like. And I think it's important to them that we don't see them as a threat in the context of like national security. Like, first of all, their technology is so far advanced. I actually talked to a guy that was involved with one of the congressional hearings, and I asked him, I was like, after he'd had some wine, I was like, here's another glass of wine. And I said, I'm just curious what you're hearing in DC as far as this conversation that is kind of surprising. And he's like, well, one, we know that it's not China or Russia. It's not us as far as what they're seeing and experiencing. And then the other part was interdimensionality. And I was like, yes, like that is the direction to go in, is this conversation around interdimensionality. And so I think there's just so much that we're going to learn over the next few decades as far as our relationship to these beings. And I do think to your point, different species have different approaches of contact, and some may have scared us in the past. But the way I approach it is I go into these experiences with an expectation that whoever I'm connecting with is benevolent and is love and above. That's part of the meditative process as well, is getting you into that space so that your calling card is one of the higher dimensions.
Right.
So I have a question that I'm not even sure exactly how to ask it or if you could answer it, but depending on what you believe, when you're here, you die, and then you become part of this collective consciousness. Are they already part of that collective consciousness, or do they have the same thing, where once they die, they become part of that?
Well, they're a different party altogether.
It's a good question. And I don't know if I can completely answer it.
Oh, come on, Crystal.
But I can tell you what my hypothesis is.
Mm-hmm.
I think that certain beings live in certain dimensions, and they have developed a collective consciousness. So many of them that I connect with come from a collective consciousness. And they have a different relationship to the body. Some of them still have bodies, so there's a huge variation here, right? Some of them can materialize in a full biological form from a non-biological form, from a light being form. Some can partially materialize, and I'm sure there's some that have not yet developed a light body as like a mode of transportation. And so I think that's the dimensional part of it, the bending of space and time as well. But I think what you're pointing to is the soul. So the soul, from my experience, is almost like this sphere of energy, of this just like coalesced, powerful energy. And when we incarnate the soul as a sphere, three-dimensional sphere, it crystallizes into a focus point within itself, like a diamond. And that's the incarnation, that's the spirit, that's the personality that the soul is wanting to understand more of this perspective. And so you have all these kind of focus points, and those are the experiences we have as humans, and probably starseeds, other experiences on other planets. And so I think my hypothesis is that they also have this soul. I think maybe the difference is that their focus point is broader. It's not quite coming down as specifically. And so it's encompassing more and more, almost potentially totally, to a soul, pure consciousness, pure awareness state. I think that that's what my hypothesis is, that that's the difference. But I would think they still have a soul component, and that in some field, in some experience, we are all the same in that soul component.
Right, and there's even a theory that they might be us evolved in the future coming back in time, right? So that would be a yes, I would say, to answer that. Right.
Yeah.
This is such a deep rabbit hole to fall into, because one of the things that I have resisted watching has been stuff about Skinwalker Ranch. And there's a lot of conversation
Me
about
too.
that. Right.
Yeah.
For those that are listening who aren't familiar with Skinwalker Ranch, it's a ranch out in is it Texas or Utah or something like that?
Yeah.
That strange things are happening. They've recorded different things, and apparently things attach to you when you visit there and come with you at home, and all kinds of really freaky stuff. And they're all talking about this being extraterrestrial related, which is really scary stuff, which adds to...
It's all dark.
It's pretty dark, yeah. I don't think I remember anything coming out of Skinwalker Ranch that wasn't dark. I could be completely mistaken. Like I said, I haven't really followed up on it too much because I don't want to follow down that fear rabbit hole. But do you think that is part of the whole disinformation campaign, or is this a legit thing that we're digging up the depths of hell?
I don't pay too much attention to those stories. I don't think that it fuels the direction that we're needing to go in contact with our star brothers and sisters. Mm-hmm. I will also say there are dark things out there. And when I was, especially in the first few years of awakening, as I mentioned at the beginning, as you turn that knob of light up, you see more. Part of what you see more of is disembodied consciousness. I even had an experience with a very demonic entity that was full on like poltergeist in my room. Like bed was shaking. I mean, it was a battle. and there was a reason for those energies. They serve a purpose. For me, encountering the things that you would most fear in a movie, like just imagine the scariest image. I don't like to talk about exactly what it was, but it enabled me to step into my power and my light, because there's no way that your soul can be harmed by these things. There's no way that your highest self can be harmed. So all of these conversations about fear are really asking us to remember that. And I've gotten to the point to where I can come across some pretty dark stuff every now and then, not as much as I used to, because I don't tune into it anymore. But it reminds me to step into my light and my power. And I don't get thrown off by those things anymore. So it does make me wonder with places like Skinwalker Ranch. I would wonder if that is actually extraterrestrial, or if that is some other energies that are asking people to come into their power.
That's an excellent point. I'm glad you made, because I'm a big proponent of Bob Monroe. In the Monroe Institute, I've been interested in out-of-body travel for a very long time. Never been successful, but I'm not bitter about that at all. But in his books, he does talk about encountering these types of negative energies that could instill fear in someone to prevent them from astral travel. Again, not bitter, but I'm a very fearful man, aren't I?
You
Holy
are.
smokes. Anyway, but in later experiences or experiments, he realized that a lot of those negative things that he was experiencing were aspects of his own psyche that were actually telling him, showing themselves to him so that he can overcome them. So I'm wondering if that has a lot to do with that. As the world starts getting batshit crazier and crazier, maybe things like Skinwalker Ranch are saying, hello, do you not see yourself? So that's how I'm choosing to look at it.
Yeah. I think there's some real truth to that.
Got one.
Yay.
All right. This has been a beautiful conversation. You are amazing. You're an incredible soul. If someone, speaking for a friend, would like to get involved with SoulPods, how do I do that? Or how does that person do that?
You can find us at soulpodapp.com. You can find us in the App Store as well. And we're on Instagram, SoulPod app, and we play around on TikTok. We're still figuring that out. But yeah, we have a lot of fun. We have an event coming up in October I think we're going to be in Northern California. We're partnering with another organization, so we'll be talking about that soon. And then we have a retreat in April of next year is our next retreat in Joshua Tree.
Oh, wow. All kinds of cool stuff. And can people find out about that information at SoulPod app?
Yeah.
I wouldn't think so. Oh, they can?
You can find it at, if you join SoulPod app, you'll get all that information. You can also join our newsletter and stay in tune that way.
Okay, excellent. We're going to add a direct link in our show notes. So if you want to download the app or connect with Crystal anyway, all you need to do is go to skepticmetaphysician.com, go to her episode page. You'll see the show notes. You'll see the link listed in the show notes, so it's easy for you to do so. I can't thank you enough for coming and expanding our consciousness. Thank you for being on the show.
Thank you so much for having me. This has been so fun.